verses 28 to 34. This section is known as the Gospel of Love because it contains, as Jesus describes, two of the greatest commandments of all time. So let's take a look at these two commandments. We're going to look at chapter 12 of Mark, verse 28 to 31. Let's take a look. So it says in these 4 verses, one of the scribes came to Jesus and asked him, which is the first of all the commandments? Jesus replied, the first is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God is Lord alone. You shall love the Lord your God with all your hearts, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There's no other commandment greater than these. Now, what we want to do is just focus on those 2 great commandments. So let's go back to the first one. The first one is self-explanatory. It makes a lot of sense. This is how we shall love our God, with all of our heart, with all our soul, with all of our mind, and with all of our strength. My relationship to God, I should put my whole effort into it. But truth of the matter is this. That's the way I should conduct all my relationships. That's the way I should conduct my priesthood, by putting full focus on my priesthood, all my heart, all my soul, all my strength. It's the same way you should handle your marriage as a spouse, as a husband and wife, putting in your total effort. Everything you have, you put into your marriage. That's how we should handle being a student. When you go to school, you should say to yourself, I'm going to put everything I have into being a student. All my mind, my soul, my heart, my effort, everything that I have. To me, that just is so clear. But what I find amazing and somewhat suspect is the second commandment. So what I want to do, if you don't mind, I just want to pull that commandment out of that section and just look at that commandment all by itself. So let's just take a look at verse 31 all by itself. Now, Jesus is saying the second of these great commandments is this. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. There's no other commandment greater than these, so that's this one and the one we just talked about. Now, you're going to notice I have that commandment itself in red ink. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That sounds like a great idea. But that means what? That means hopefully you love yourself. If you love yourself, you're going to love your neighbor. You see, that's the way I see it is. That's the commandment of proportionality, of relationship to. The amount of love I have for myself will equal the amount of love I have for my neighbor. That's a little suspect, isn't it? What happens if I don't love who I am? I don't like myself. I hate myself. There are people who don't like who they are. There are people who hate who they are. That means what? Following that commandment, that means if I hate myself, I'm going to do what with my neighbor? Hate my neighbor. That commandment only works if you love yourself, you can love your neighbor. You know, psychologists, they say something very interesting. They say that people who hate and hurt other people do so for basically one reason. What is it? They hate themselves. When you watch television, you read the newspaper, and you see that someone hurt someone else, and you might say, why? Was it the weapon? Was it the knife? Was it the gun that caused this disaster? The truth of the matter is, there's something under that caused that problem. What was it? The person who inflicted this pain, who inflicted this hurt onto someone else. Why did they do it? The base reason, according to psychologists, is because they hate who they are, and they lashed out at someone else. Now, someone might do it to just one individual. Someone might decide to hurt multiple people. And then everyone wonders, why does that occur? How do we stop that in society? We take away the weapons. What really allowed that to happen? What allowed it to happen is the person could not stand who they are. And they lashed out at someone else. You know how this works. Let's say to yourself, you're angry inside because you allow people to step on you, to walk all over you. You say to yourself, I let my boss walk all over me, my fellow employees walk over me, my neighbor walks over me, everyone I allow to walk over me. I hate myself for that. I'm angry about that. So now you're stewing inside. No one's ever going to walk on me again. And you're driving to your house or driving somewhere else, and someone pulls out in front of you. And what happens? That's it. And so you follow the guy for the next 5 miles. And you got your hand out the window and you're honking a horn and you're calling him back. Why did you do that? Because you're angry, not at him. He just pulled out in front of you. You slammed on the brakes. You didn't hit his car. No one hit you from behind. No one was killed. No one was hurt. But you're angry at yourself, and he's going to pay for it. So you follow the guy for 5 miles, and all of a sudden the guy does what? He stops. You say to yourself, I didn't plan on that. Now what am I going to do? Good thing my car has reverse. Here. But that's done why? Because we're angry inside. You know, whenever they interview the neighbors of someone who causes great destruction, the answer you always hear is the same. Now, what was this neighbor like? He just took out 11, 12, 15 people. Well, usually you hear he was a loner. He kept to himself. Anytime he came outside, he yelled at the neighbors. You never hear someone say, well, he was the nicest guy. He would come over and cut my grass, buy my groceries, say nice things to everyone in the neighborhood. He was the sweetest guy. You never hear that for an answer, do you? Because when you love yourself, you're going to love your neighbor. And when you hate yourself, you're going to hate and eventually hurt your neighbor. Most people will say what when they interview the neighbors of someone who causes great harm? What do they say? I am not surprised. I figured eventually he could do something like that because he couldn't stand who he was. We're going to watch a little video this morning. This video shows a gal that is comfortable with who she is. She loves herself. And when you love yourself, you will then love someone else. And when you love someone else, you make the world a better place to live in and to be a part of. Let's just take a look at this video this morning. Love is contagious. So is hate. Love your neighbor as yourself. Heavenly Father, our prayer this morning should be, allow everyone to love and appreciate who they are. Because when you love and appreciate yourself, that will be reflected in your love and appreciation of your neighbor. If you don't love who you are, you cannot love your neighbor. And that will eventually manifest itself in some ugly, ugly ways. Hate is difficult. And whenever you see someone doing something that is hateful and you're watching it, what should you do, you ask the question? Pray for that person. Why would I want to pray for someone who just caused hate, just hurt someone else? Because you want to pray, say, God, give them the ability to begin to love themselves, whatever it is about themselves that they hate. And they lash out at others because they hate themselves. Allow that to turn around. Because if they can turn around the hate they have for themselves, they can turn around the hate they inflict upon others. Martin Luther King, and I'll leave you with this. He once said this, and to me it just makes all the sense in the world. So when we watch violence on television, we read about it in a newspaper, we see it on the internet, we say to ourselves, how do we stop it? How do we turn that around? I think his quote is powerful. He said this: darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can. And then he added, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can.